All right, back on the conversation. Now we got a Democrat running against another Democrat, and so that should be interesting. Who should win and why? Well, let's talk it through. Mike Ortega is a candidate for U.S. Congress in California's 46th district. He's a biomedical engineer, and he's running against current Democratic incumbent Lou Correa. So, Mike, welcome.
Hey, how are you doing today, Cenk?
Good, good, good. So now we're going to get to you. You have an interesting background in aeronautical engineering degree from University of Southern California. The engineering degree, good. USC, take it or leave it. Okay, and I didn't even go to UCLA. But first, since there's a Democratic incumbent, it obviously gets to the question of, hey, what's wrong with Lou Correa? Why do you have to run against him?
No, absolutely, and that's a great question. And I think this season, as we've been fighting for some real gains for working families, middle-class families, and the Build Back Better Act, the Reconciliation Act, we've seen the damage that corporate Democrats can do to this kind of legislation. We've seen them try to gut the provisions that would expand Medicare. We've seen them try to gut the ability of Medicare to negotiate prices. We've seen them try to remove or feign that they're not in support of raising the minimum wage. Corporate Democrats are doing more damage to the cause of working families and middle-class families than a lot of Republicans, because we know where the Republicans stand. But it's corporate Democrats, people like Lou Correa, who take big money from big oil and big pharma, who are really giving us the worst. And we saw it on a big stage, right, with Manchin and Sinema. But on a much smaller stage, you see this happen in committees with people like Lou Correa who go to bat for big moneyed interest and really betray their base.
So in the case of Correa, though, when he takes money from pharmaceutical companies or oil companies, I assume that they're doing that for the general welfare because they just want to help your district so much. Are you saying that it's because they want more benefits for oil companies and drug companies? Is that your outrageous claim here?
Absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous claim that I have. One of the most popular elements that was being proposed within the Build Back Better Act was the ability of Medicare to just negotiate on drug prices. And Lou Correa was one of the people taking the big pharma money from some of those dark money PACs and advocating against a very popular measure, right? Within my district, very popular measure, the ability of government to negotiate on our behalf. And it's a very well-known fact that the drug prices in the United States are gouging middle-class families, working-class families.
But Mike,
talk to me.
Sorry, so that's clear. There's no question about that. But do we have evidence that Correa was part of the group that wanted to fight that provision?
So it didn't make it to his committee, but before they got to gut it, right? So by the time it got out onto the floor, out of the first committee, I believe it had already had a few swords taken to it. But if you follow the money, that's usually where you find out where the influence is going, right? So Lou's number one donor is Big Pharma, and then number two, the group of congressmen and women who were going to bat for the pharma companies. If you follow the money through this PAC called Center Forward, you'll see he's on that list of people that they've begun spending money to try to support with these, deceptive ad campaigns, trying to say that they're saving jobs, when really what they're doing is they're representing the interests of Big Pharma.
Yeah, so now I know that the press loves it when there's a challenger to a progressive who's the leading Democrat in the race, Nina Turner, India Walton, you fill in the blank, right? Ed Markey, and everybody will come out of the woodwork to support a corporate Democrat doing a race against them, a primary against them. In the case of California, it's top two go to the general election, so there's absolutely no harm in a primary. But since Correa is in the Blue Dog Coalition, the New Democrat Coalition, and the Problem Solvers Caucus, those are all conservative Democratic caucuses and coalitions. That means the press is very likely on his side. Now that's my theory, but I don't know your district. So how has your race and your challenge to him been received by the press, in both nationally, if any have reacted nationally and locally?
So there's no national press yet. Look, if they can, they avoid covering any progressive challengers unless they become a real threat. Much of the local press is in support of Lou Correa. I believe the local paper, Orange County Register, endorsed him in the last election. He's widely a favorite because he's seen as like the old school middle of the path. But that's what he is. He's an old school right-wing Democrat who really should be a Republican on paper, but keeps the D next to his name so that he could keep running in this district and keep getting the endorsements. But if you follow him down the line on most policies, the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, he doesn't stand for them, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, but all right.
So in terms of the press, until we make a real threat, they're not going to give us any time.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Like, it doesn't make sense, but I get it. I've seen it, trust me. But you're on here. So Mike, there's two different ways that you could be different than the incumbent. One is policy, you've hinted at that here, and you're not taking corporate PAC money, I know that. And it sounds like you're for Medicare for all, Green New Deal. Another way is through how you react to Democratic leadership. Now, I know that it puts you in a difficult situation because if you say that you won't slavishly follow anything that Nancy Pelosi says, California reporters and press will turn on you viciously, and they will say, how dare you, she is the queen, and you must follow all her orders. But our audience here thinks there's absolutely no point in supporting you if you're gonna go support everything Nancy Pelosi tells you. So that puts you in a tough spot. So are you gonna listen to Nancy Pelosi when you get there? I mean, look, Mike, it's easy to laugh, but we've had dozens of people in your position who said they wouldn't, and then they did.
Just a few things. Look, I grew up as a fighter. All right, that's one of the things. I grew up on tough streets, largely Puerto Rican community. I've built my own bones off the sweat on my back. Very humble upbringings. Mother from Puerto Rico, father from Ecuador. I don't like taking orders from anybody, and a part of what we're fighting for is to build the necessary coalition and base. So it doesn't matter what anyone in the Democratic leadership has to say, but that we have to take the unpopular stances. And what we're putting forward is a candidacy and a candidate who is brave and has the courage to take them on. That includes taking some unpopular votes. That includes not playing ball sometimes. So I think recently we saw a pretty good vote where I think the squad voted down the infrastructure bill because that wasn't joined with the Build Back Better. There's a lot of criticisms that be given there, but our plan is to go in and really shake things up.
So how would you have voted on that bill? Would you have voted with the squad or no?
Yeah, I would have voted no on it. There's a number of reasons why I would have, but exactly the same politically as they did, which is right now they lost so much leverage, right, heading into it. So right now I know that they just passed the Build Back Better Act, but you need to be able to put your money where your mouth is, right? Republicans do this all the time, right? They demand all kinds of allegiances and votes, and they're very top down. Those guys vote rank and file like military, but it's always the Democrats who are supposed to be the nice guys who always compromise. And right now, if you look at the polls, progressive policies are popular. So why wouldn't you be fighting for it? Why wouldn't you be trying to expose corporate Democrats who are secretly trying to water down bills that would really have a meaningful impact to the families of working people? And that's what we plan to do. We plan to be confrontational. We plan to have a good time while we're doing it, and hopefully rustle some feathers.
So Mike, there's a reason why they wouldn't do it. And just to, of course, to clarify, the Build Back Better bill passed the House, which of course means nothing.
Passed the House, that's right.
It hasn't passed the Senate, and the Just Democrats there said the whole point was to wait for it to pass the Senate, right? Otherwise you lose leverage, and you're right, they've lost all leverage, and Manchin is laughing and shredding it as we speak if he passes anything at all. But the reason why folks don't get confrontational when they get into Washington is because the minute you win, you're a congressperson, and they basically tell you, you made it, Mike, okay? And so now you're gonna upset everybody, you don't know what you're doing. The leadership is really smart. Pelosi's a master legislator. Here she's telling you she's gonna pass the Senate. So Mike, why are you causing trouble? This is really bad. We're gonna have to tell the corporate media you're a bad person, Mike.
And then I'll accept it, and that'll be totally fine. Because too long we've seen Democrats compromise, make careers out of their positions, and that's not at all what I'm interested in doing. Okay, I have a background working, doing labor organizing. I was a member of United Food and Commercial Workers, working on production lines. I've worked in production lines in garment factories as well, and my experience tells me, look, we need to fight, because today the working class in the United States, the middle class in the United States, are getting a real raw end of the deal. Meanwhile, you have billionaires competing to go into space. And so we don't have the time, we don't have the luxury to be polite. And so I'm not on board with trying to play nice or patty cake with anybody that's in the DNC, and I don't plan on playing patty cake with the incumbent who's here right now.
All right, by the way, the website's ortegaforcongress.com, ortegaforcongress.com. And you can, again, no corporate PAC money. So there are no oil companies, no drug companies that help his so-called Democratic opponent. So that's your links to donate and volunteer. We'll have the links down below if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. And Mike, one more thing. So in your district, what are a couple of your positions that are the most important, so people have a sense of what you're going to fight for?
Absolutely. So we are fighting for overwhelmingly popular platform elements, right? So Medicare for all is at the top. In 2020, Bernie Sanders won around half of the votes during the Democratic primary, more than the next 5 candidates combined. These are policies that are popular in this district. Second is a Green New Deal. The question of whether or not we're investing in green energy and providing clean air and clean water for our children to have, it was important to the people that are here. And lastly, it's legalization now for undocumented workers. Undocumented workers make up a large backbone of the labor force, not just in California, but across the country. And they're an entire segment of the working class who pay taxes, who live here, who are part of the economy, who are marginalized and disenfranchised. And today we need legislators who are going to fight to actually give a pathway to citizenship for DACA students. We're going to need pathway to citizenship for workers who have been here living, raising their families, and bring them into the fold so that they're not afraid to report on their employer who's violating labor laws, so that they're not afraid to organize unions and actually be able to bring them into the labor movement in the United States. These are some of the big policy issues that are here. It's overwhelmingly an immigrant community, around 70% Latino, and they deserve somebody who represents their interests and their politics.
But Mike, we're out of time here, but if we keep them illegal, that way they can drive down wages. What are you doing here? Corporate America is not going to be happy with you at all. If you give them a pathway to citizenship and you unionize them, they'll have higher wages and that'll drive up the wages of every other American. Well, then you're not going to get any corporate donors that way, Mike. What's the matter with you?
That's exactly the thing, right? That's exactly the strategy. They're trying to divide working class between illegal and legal. But the reality is they don't want to deport everyone who's undocumented. I mean, tomatoes would rot on the vine. So the reality that we know is that they need the exploited labor to try to make us all work for less. And the way we beat that back is by accepting and bringing in our brothers and sisters who come from across the borders and give them a pathway to become citizens.
Last thing I'll just tell the audience, just because we came up on the issue. Guys, it isn't about people taking your jobs. It's about wages for everyone, okay? Because right now, what's the number one thing they're complaining about on cable news? A labor shortage. So if undocumented immigrants were taking your job, then we wouldn't have a labor shortage, right? That's just a fact. And so it isn't about that. It's that they want to keep them in this limbo state, in purgatory, if you will, because that way they can pay them lower wages and pay you lower wages, because it doesn't create upward pressure on wages if you pay them a livable wage. So that's why Mike Ortega's fighting on that issue, among others. It's good to see a strong progressive in that race. And by the way, guys, in case you need to know, the 46th district is solidly Democratic. So there's no reason why a conservative Democrat his coffers filled with corporate money should have that safe Democratic seat. OrtegaForCongress.com is the website. Mike, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Yank. This was great.
No problem. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.